Welcome to the Emerald City Hockey Podcast. Join RJ and Dylan as they discuss each week's Seattle Kraken news and top stories from around the league.
Oh my gosh, RJ. I hate these Sunday games. Now, generally, I'm in favor of the Sunday games. Yes, it kind of takes away from football watching, but I like them. Generally, they're a little earlier in the day, like tonight at 6 o'clock. But at the same time, for you and I, we record the podcast on Sunday, obviously with the game later and then the post-game live. We don't really have time to do it after the game. So in order to get the podcast out early Monday morning, we're stuck doing it now before the game, which means, it's entirely possible that the Kraken's losing streak is over by the time anybody hears this.
Yep, for sure. You all will know what happened tonight against Washington, or I guess last night to all of you. But that is the downside of these Sunday games.
Yeah, so another one of those, but it should still be a good podcast. We got some good stuff going on. We're going to kind of do a roster review sort of thing where we're going to go through everybody on the roster and just talk about how they played so far this year. Just because otherwise, not much happened this week. The losing streak continued, but we kind of really talked about a lot of the problems last week. We didn't want to just rehash that. We wanted to try to be a little more positive maybe. So we're going to go ahead and do that roster breakdown. But first, we do have some exciting news, something some of you guys have been asking about, and I'm sure many others will be interested in. And that is starting on the 1st of December, we are going to be launching an Emerald City Hockey Patreon page.
That's right.
So for those of you that don't know what Patreon is, it's a website that allows fans to support creators like us doing, multiple things. It's a monthly service, so you sign up and you're charged monthly. You can cancel at any time. But you're charged monthly, and they'll have different tiered brackets that you can choose that'll give you, extra content from the creators that you enjoy, or sometimes physical goods, or just, lots of different things. So we're going to be starting that December 1st. We got some fun stuff in there for everybody. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you, RJ, and you can kind of take us through the 3 tiers that we have, and then we can talk a little bit about them all.
Yes, so we have 3 tiers for the Patreon. The first tier will be $2 a month, and that's if you want to support us, but you don't want to commit to maybe some of the larger tiers, and maybe super chats in the post-game live aren't your thing. This is a way you can kind of help support the channel for the cost of about a Gatorade per month. So that's a good way to do that. The next tier, which will be $5 a month, comes with an extra 2 podcasts a month. And those will be a little more casual. We'll kind of dive deeper into some NHL-wide topics that we don't really get the chance to cover, with our Kraken coverage usually being the priority here. So I think those are going to be really fun, and those come with that tier. And then finally, our top tier. So it comes with everything in the previous tier, so you get those podcasts. Plus, 1 to 2 times a month, we will live stream an entire Kraken road game. So you can hop on with Dylan and I for the entire game. And we always have a lot to say, a lot of thoughts during the game, that don't always make it to Twitter or even to the post-game live. So it's kind of a chance to just really join us and experience a whole Kraken game together with the community, of people in that tier. So on top of that, you'll get a free shipping code for all merch on our Emerald City Hockey store. And we will have more merch coming in the next week, too. So in time for the holiday season, keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, and that third tier is going to cost $10.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also it's going to be like live commentary for us. We're not legally allowed to straight up stream the game, so it'll be one of those, you'll watch the game however it is you watch a Kraken game, and then you'll just, mute Forsland and JT Brown, and listen to us instead. But it'll all be done on YouTube, just like the post-game lives. You guys will be able to ask us questions mid-game. We're going to be, still have the live chat and all that stuff going on. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And we're actually kind of to promote that we're doing this, and, also maybe just as a trial run for us, because I'm sure there's going to be some kinks to work out in it all. We're going to go ahead, and this Friday for the road game in Tampa Bay, we're going to go ahead and do that free for everybody just on the YouTube channel. We're just going to go ahead and do a live game, commentary to that Lightning game. Hopefully it'll be a good game for the Kraken, but I think regardless of what happens, just, being with everybody through all that is going to be a lot of fun. Just because the post-game lives have been so much fun. The community that has been built around all this is super awesome. It's clear everybody's getting to know each other. It's not just all having to run through us now, which I think is really, really cool for everybody involved. So we're hoping that this is just kind of like that next chapter in everything where we can all, really come together and enjoy the Kraken with one another. So just a quick recap for the Patreon. It's going to launch December 1st. You're charged at the 1st of every month. That's why we're waiting till December 1st. We don't want to launch it now, have people charged, and then immediately charged again. So launching December 1st, 3 tiers, $2 just to help support the channel. $5 tier, you get those extra 2 podcasts a month that we talk, kind of NHL broad topics. And then at the $10 tier, you get the 2 podcasts, free shipping code for merch, as well as the access to the live commentary streams. So everybody look out for a little bit more information on that as we, get closer to the 1st. We'll have the exact details for everything. Otherwise, hopefully everybody can join us this Friday for that Tampa Bay game. I know it is, right after Thanksgiving, but I still think it'll be a lot of fun. All right, RJ, moving into kind of the main topics for today, for this podcast, obviously, the last couple games, not super exciting, not necessarily anything we totally want to revisit. Certainly not that Colorado game. Yeah. So we thought, all right, we talked about all the problems last week. Pretty much all the same problems now. No need to rehash all that. But, we're a decent ways into the season now, coming up on 20 games. So we thought it was probably a good time to go ahead and look at this roster and kind of go player by player and figure out, who's been playing well, who's been surprising to the upside, maybe who's been, we're waiting still to kind of make an impact. And this should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think this is a good way to go about things this week. So let's dive in.
Yeah. So we're going to... normally we go net out with this sort of thing. Today we're going to do it in inverse order of that. We're going to go forwards first, and we're going to go in order of point scoring. So that's kind of going to be how we're going to break them down. And that means, RJ, first up is Jordan Eberle, who I think, at the expansion draft, we thought he was, going to be the goal scorer. He's the, only guy really on this roster that had a significant history of that. And so far, that's what he's been for this team.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it's been as expected for Jordan Eberle. These are numbers that we're not really surprised to see. But in other ways, it hasn't been as expected. He had that rough stretch early in the season. And certainly given the Kraken as a team needing to overcome adversity right now, his story is a good one to look at, of a guy who really was snake bitten to start the season. So many grade A chances. They just weren't going for him. And I remember the interviews with him where, everyone's asking, like, when will you get one to go in? When will you get one to go in? He's just like, I don't know. They're gonna happen if you just stick with it and get chances. And sure enough, he stuck with it. And the goals started coming in bunches. So he's been a great, that's been a great story for the Kraken this season.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of went from nothing to everything all at once like that. From a 0% shooting percentage all the way up to 21.5%. I'm sure at some point he'll settle into some sort of middle ground there. But for now, yeah, I'll take those 9 goals in 17 games from him. And I think the other thing that's been, I've been very, very happy with seeing from him, and it was certainly one of the questions I had coming into the season, was how he was going to do on the power play. Now, obviously for the Kraken, the power play as a whole has not been great, to say the least, but he's got 4 points on the power play, which is a lot more than I thought he would, given, his last couple seasons playing for the Islanders, where largely he would just kind of completely disappear on the power play and not really contribute, despite seeing a significant amount of time out there for them. So I've been really happy. He's already got 2 power play goals. Really excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, an area we weren't sure what to expect. And kind of as the Kraken power play has gotten a little bit better of late, so has Eberle's presence on it. And he's kind of found the right places to be in for rebounds, which is one of the reasons for those goals too, which you always love to see on the power play.
Yeah, and he's doing what goal scorers do, which is he's finding, open patches of ice, and then he's taking shots from there, right? He's not afraid to just shoot it. Tied for the team lead in shots with 42 through those 17 games. One of the things that really started when his when this goal scoring streak kind of started for him was he started going to the high slot a lot, right? He would cut across east-west on it through the offensive zone, and when he was there, he would just take a shot and snipe it, past the goaltender. It sounds simple. It sounds easy to do. If it was, everybody would do it. So it's obviously not. But it is, that is one of those things that goal scorers do that not everybody else does. So it's been fun to see him wake up like that. But looking ahead to the next player who is tied with Eberle for the shots lead on the team with 42 is Jaden Schwartz. Now, it kind of surprised me that he's actually, second on this team in points, RJ, because there have been some games where it's been a little hard to notice him.
For sure, and especially early in the season too. It took him a while to get that first goal this season, and he's got 3 goals. It's mostly assists. He's got 9 assists. But he's been contributing in kind of more quiet ways than maybe what we expected. But the scoring is still there, and he's still a fixture on kind of what's been that top line with Wenberg and Eberle, as we just mentioned.
Yeah, the goals have obviously been an issue. Talking about, not contributing too much on the power play. He's only got 1 assist on the power play so far. That's it for scoring there. That could obviously increase. He's kind of been stuck in that net front role, though, and there haven't been a lot of good rebound opportunities for whoever's been sitting there on the power play so far. So I'm sure that's really what's contributing to that. But yeah, I mean, talking about Jaden Schwartz coming in, obviously signed that big free agency contract, really excited. It felt like, okay, this was one of those guys that fits with this identity that Ron Francis is trying to build of a strong physical team that's also good through transition, that can get some stuff done, and then just, depth of scoring, so to speak. Not quite seeing it with the goals, had some problems, finishing on some breakaway opportunities throughout this stretch of season. But I don't know. I mean, he's playing well. It's just, it doesn't feel like he's quite living up to what we all thought he would do.
Yeah, and I remember, in our season preview for the Kraken, we kind of had him predicted to lead in, maybe goals, maybe assists. I think we even had some points, where it just looked like, all right, he's going to be the guy we're predicting to get a whole bunch of points this season and kind of light up the scoreboard. And it just hasn't happened for him yet. But watching him, he's still skilled enough that it can happen. And given the way he's playing, things need to change a little bit. Really for the whole team. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think he still can.
Yeah, and the fact that he is producing at the rate he is producing, while us, with us still being like, look, this guy could be doing more, so to speak, right? Speaks a lot about him as a player, right? Like, the expectations are high for him because he is a good player. And, as the season moves on, as we've been talking about, law of averages kicking in for everything from the power play to just winning games. Same thing with a guy like Jaden Schwartz. If you keep doing all the right things, at some point, things are going to click for you. But Jaden Schwartz with the tied for the team league in assists with 9 to the next guy with 9 assists that he's tied with, Alexander Wenberg. So another free agent acquisition brought in by Ron Francis. We thought, okay, coming in from Florida, good two-way guy, probably see some more, ice time here. Ron Francis even said it, right? He wants him in a top 6 role. That was the expectation with that signing. And we're seeing it. He is, I mean, I don't think it's really that hard to argue, but he's for sure been the best distributor on this team so far.
Yep, and that's what he brings too. I mean, he's a great passer. He's an excellent distributor. He can be a little frustrating at times, his reluctance to shoot the puck. That's something we've kind of covered in detail, but you've got to like Wenberg for the player that he is. And, I've seen in comments and things on Twitter, like, when I say Wenberg needs to shoot, everyone, Blue Jackets fans and Panthers fans, like, this is the guy he is. And, I think, he's a good player, like, for what he is. And you have to just appreciate that. He's a great distributor. He's solid defensively too. Yeah. And so I think he's kind of done what you would expect him to do. It's tough with him having to spend so much time as like the number 1 center, which, as good of a player as he is, you might prefer that he could be on maybe a second line, just getting those kind of minutes. Yeah, and that's not to take anything away from him. It's just tough when you're an expansion team and you might not have the highest end talent to maybe bump a guy like Wenberg down the lineup just a little bit, get some easier matchups, get some easier minutes. But he's done well so far.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only complaints I've got for him, and we've talked about this several times through post-game shows and all over the place, really, is just to shoot more. 28 shots through 17 games. I mean, that's, it's not even 2 shots a game. Like, if you're the first line center, you should probably have at least 2 shots a game, right?
And he's had the opportunities too. It's not for a lack of tries. He just needs to be a little more willing to pull the trigger.
Yeah, and I think he's got a good shot. Despite everything, I mean, he's shooting at 7%, which is low. It's not, great, but it's also not as bad as it seems for a guy that's only got 2 goals so far on the season. It just kind of speaks to how little he is actually shooting the puck. But I think if he can figure that out, things will start looking really bright. And then maybe he starts scoring a little more. It takes some of the pressure off his line mates, takes some of the pressure off Eberle, maybe even opens up some more opportunities for him. I think that'll be a key to helping a lot, especially on the power play. If he can kind of become a threat on the power play, where right now teams are obviously cheating away from him, they're daring him to shoot and he's just not. I think that'll help things out a lot. All right, so looking ahead, next we've got Jared Mccann, who through 12 games, 6 goals, 4 assists for 10 points. I mean, he's arguably been the most electric player on this team so far, right?
For sure. He brings something offensively that really no one else on the roster does. And you saw the Kraken really missing that when he was out. But now with him back, I mean, it just adds another element to what they can do offensively. He's one of those few guys who isn't afraid to just shoot the puck, from whatever angle he's at. And he's got such a good shot that, it really pays off for him too. So he's definitely been one of the most pleasant surprises. Yeah, and we did expect him to do well, but man, he has really stepped into being kind of the player that he showed flashes of the last couple seasons. Like, he's legit.
Yeah, no, his shot is the best on this team, his wrist shot. Like, watching it in practices, those few I was able to attend while up there, I was really, really surprised at just how strong and powerful it is and how quick his release is. Because that's a lot of it at this level, right? When you make it to the NHL, everybody's got a good wrist shot to some extent, right? Yeah, maybe not everybody, but certainly a lot of players do. The difference then starts becoming how quick you can shoot it, right? Goalies are, even better at the NHL level than they are anywhere else. And so the faster you can get it, the faster you can get that shot off so that they have less reaction time to it, becomes the difference. And I think that's what we're seeing with Mccann. The other thing is, beyond just his shooter's instinct, he's kind of playing like a power forward at times too. He's driving the net. He's willing to take on contact to get a better shooting angle. And that's something that I didn't really expect from him, based on his previous, experiences places. But that's been a very pleasant surprise. And again, in some respects, he's kind of the only Kraken player really willing to do that.
Yeah, and it provides just this other level to his game too, where you can use him in different ways. Recently, the Kraken have basically had him, kind of anchoring his own line, not giving him, really Schwartz or Eberle or those guys to play with. It's been, Johansen or Donskoy, some of those guys where, they can contribute offensively, but like McCann's clearly the guy anchoring that line, and it's allowed them to, really give some of those support pieces to maybe other guys, like a Wenberg, like a Yanni Gourd. So it just opens things up offensively for the whole team.
Yeah, no, his ability to kind of just make things happen, be his own catalyst for offense is really important and definitely can't be understated. So Mccann has been a very, very welcome surprise on this team. Looking at the next player, though, I don't think many of us could have predicted this. The 5th highest scoring player on the Kraken, Brandon Tanf.
Yes.
And not only is he that high in points, 7 of his 9 points are goals, matching his season total from last year, I think. So that's really, really impressive. He's been so much fun to watch, a total firecracker out there. He's been bringing the energy and the toughness and the physicality and all the, the forechecking, the back checking, the penalty kill, all that stuff we expected. But then you just throw on this offensive explosion and Kraken got a really good player.
For sure. And he's already matched his goal output from all of last season in, I think, 12 fewer games played. So, yeah, that's great to see. I mean, what else can you say about Brandon Tanf? He does it all. You can put him on any line. He can contribute, like you said, forecheck, backcheck, everything. He just brings that game every single night. I think we've kind of talked about it so much over the course of the season, but you got to just still appreciate it, just everything that he brings.
Yeah, and especially through times like right now where the team is struggling. They're obviously struggling. Everybody knows that they're struggling. They're feeling the pressure. And just kind of night in, night out, you're putting forth a great effort and then not getting, good results and all that kind of stuff. He hasn't slowed down at all. Like, his game has not deviated at all from what it is, and that is, maximum effort all the time. And that speaks a lot to his character and the kind of player he is. And I think that is, a valuable asset to have on any team, but certainly a team that, is struggling right now, and, a team that had playoff aspirations, because that is something that you need during the long haul of a season, and then certainly come playoff time. So we'll see if he's able to, come playoff time, if the Kraken are in a position for them to take advantage of all of that. Coming in at 6 is Yanni Gourd. So missed the beginning of the season, still recovering from that shoulder surgery. Came back a lot sooner than I think most of us thought he would. And, talk about another guy bringing energy to the team, bringing, just excitement, being a fun player to watch for fans. That's just Yanni Gourd.
For sure. I mean, he is... he brings so much in so many different ways, and we were very excited to get him back around the start of the season. I think it made a big difference getting him back earlier than expected for the Kraken, both offensively, defensively, and just from an energy perspective. He's got 8 points in 13 games, which, great output. He's kind of been used in some different situations. He started out as kind of that first line center, played in a very offensive role. Which is not the way he was used in Tampa. They have this embarrassment of riches at forward. They were able to have him kind of as third line shutdown center. But the Kraken experimented with him as like that top offensive guy. More recently, he's been playing more of a shutdown role in a shutdown line. And of course, he's excelled at that. We know he can do that. I would like to see them maybe try him in a more offensive role again at some point, just because you're going to need the goal scoring from somewhere. And he's one of those few guys who can bring it. But yeah, he's been as advertised, and he's had that knee injury from that blocked shot that I think he's still dealing with a little bit. You can't really see it, negatively impacting his play. He's still playing very well, but he's had a few maintenance days too, where he's been held out of morning skate or held out of a practice. So you got to think he's still dealing with that a little bit, which can make things tough.
Yeah, for sure. And you could tell when his focus shifted to being, more of a defensive guy, trying to be more of a shutdown guy, because we saw during that first stretch of home games, he was a lot more offensively focused. He was driving a little deeper into the offensive zone, trying to make things happen. He was driving to the net. A lot of the stuff that we were saying about Jared McCann, Gourd was doing through that first homestand, and we're not seeing as much of it now. And I do think that's because of the, defensive focus that I think the coaching staff has wanted him to have, and it is paying off amongst forwards with over 10 games played. He leads the team in Corsi for percentage, and he's doing that, with a technically higher defensive, zone percent start position, and
usually matched up against some of the top lines on the other team as well.
Yeah, exactly. So he drives possession like nobody else. Really kind of throughout the league, not just on this team. So that being said, 13 games played, he's got 32 shots on goal. So he's still shooting the puck. He's still trying to make things happen offensively. My guess is he'll be another guy that, over the course of the season, he's going to have 20, 25 goals. It's just, they might come in bunches rather than, kind of equally spread out throughout the year.
Yep.
But talking about goals, RJ, Jonas Donskoy, 17 games played. He's got the 7 points, but just hasn't been able to find the back of the net.
And he had such a good chance the other day, too, against Colorado. I think it was on the power play, just wound up for a slap shot. Kemper got his glove on it, but it feels like he just can't buy a goal at this point. Mm-hmm. That said, he's still generating a lot offensively. I think I like a lot of what I see in his game. It's not like he's, gone super cold and isn't doing the right things. I think the goals will come for him, but yeah, it's just tough when you can't get one to go.
Yeah, kind of similar to like we were talking about with Eberle back, at the start of the season for him, right? It's just hard, and you got to keep grinding, and once they happen, tend to relax a little, right? Like it seems like such a cliche, right? Just like in baseball, and you can't hit, right? You're in a slump there. You're gripping the bat a little tighter. These guys grip the stick a little tighter. All that stuff. But it's true, right? It's a cliche because it is true. And so I do think once he gets one, I think things are going to really start opening up for him. So the other thing to talk about with Donskoy is he's the first guy we've talked about with a positive plus minus. Now, I know you're not a huge fan of that, and there are certainly problems with the plus minus, but everybody else is, with the exception of Tanf and Gourd, you're looking at guys like Eberle, Schwartz up at the top being -10, -9. So for him to be +1 is pretty substantial. He plays tough minutes too. He's out there a lot, in defensive positions. And then finally, he's the only guy who's been effective in the bumper slot on the power play. And they've been trying to kind of force that all year to some extent. They've kind of gone away from trying to force it now just because they're trying to search for anything that'll get things going. But back when that was really a point of emphasis, he was the only one capable of handling it, having 3 guys draped on him and still being able to puck handle, try to suck in even the 4th defender at times. Like there were some really good power play roles for him out there where he was just kind of being a one-man show, trying to create offense, trying to get his teammates open. They weren't really always, moving into the spots to get open. But I think that can't be ignored either. His stick handling, his ability to dribble through traffic, and then his passing, while guys are hanging all over him. He's a really good player, really underappreciated player. You and I've thought that for years from him, at all his stops along the way. And again, it's hard to be, totally properly acknowledged and properly appreciated when, you got that 0 in the goals column this far into a season.
Yep.
But now on to, arguably even a bigger surprise than Brandon Tanf, and that's Ryan Donato. So a guy that I think, we talked about several times, this was his last chance really at an NHL career, bounced around a lot of places, can't really, could never stick anywhere. 25 now, running out of time, but it seems like he's found a home in Seattle.
Thankfully, yeah, and he scored the first goal in the Kraken's franchise history, which was nice for him and certainly well-deserved. He's been on the 4th line now more often than not, but he's still doing the same good things that have led to his success this season. He's not afraid to take shots. He's driving hard to the net every opportunity he gets, which is something I'd like to see from more players on the team. There are a lot of things that he does offensively where, I'd like some more of it from some of the other players. And oftentimes he's the only one who's kind of bringing that extra edge, that extra intensity, even in the limited ice time that he's getting. So yeah, I keep it up, really. Donato's been doing all the right things.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it when you talked about him driving to the net, because that's been one of the difference factors for him, I feel like, is, compared to maybe some of the stops previously for him, or things are just clicking, or I don't know totally why he's being so much more productive here than he has before, but I do feel like he is just playing like that perfect bottom 6 guy, where he's going to go out there, going to use his body on the forecheck, use his stick on the forecheck, which I think has also been really impressive. He's not just trying to necessarily hit somebody off the dump and chase the way maybe a Brandon Tanf does. He's trying to pick off passes and stuff. He's just trying to disrupt what the other team is doing, not give them a clean break out of their own zone. And to see that effort also be rewarded offensively when the Kraken have the puck, him driving to the net, him being there for rebounds. He's been unlucky several times. He could easily have 5 or 6 goals instead of just 2. But again, at some point, you keep doing all those right things, it's got to break through for you at some point. And so Donato has definitely been, for me anyway, the biggest welcome surprise for the Seattle Kraken so far this year. Mm-hmm. Now we've got Marcus Johansen. So, just recently came back into the lineup after, missing a lot of time after that first game of the season. Through 6 games, he's got 4 points, 1 goal. That's, a good clip for him and really for being on this team right now, given the state of their offense and everything, and especially their struggle on the power play, where that is where his one goal is, and 2 of his 3 assists are on the power play. The power play it finally broke through after that big, like, 0 for 1,000 opportunities they had. That was when, Marcus Johansen came back. And so,
yeah, who knew he would be the X factor on the power play? A pleasant surprise, certainly. I certainly didn't see that coming. But you had guys who, in that net front role who maybe weren't as comfortable with it, or it just didn't work out. But that's somewhere that Johansen feels natural. It's where he's played on the power play his whole career, as he said. And he just creates a lot of different looks the power play didn't have otherwise.
Yeah, because, while he plays net front, he's a little bit better about moving around, trying to get open for things, trying to screen the goalie. Some of the other guys that we've seen play net front on the power play, like a Jaden Schwartz, a little static maybe, more so than you'd want them to be. The puck can, kind of shift sides of the ice from where they are, and they're not really following it. Johansen follows it. He knows how to play in front of the net on the power play, and it is working. It has been kind of a catalyst for their recent success there. But also, even 5-on-5, kind of reminding me a little bit of Donskoy in the fact that he's really creative. He can just make things happen. He can stick handle. He can, suck a defender in and then go past them. That's, again, something that this team has kind of been missing.
Yep. And when we, the signing happened, we're like, well, we don't really know where he fits on this team, just kind of given who else they have. I think this is one instance where, Ron Francis and Haxtell probably knew a little bit better than we did. Because, he fits really well.
Yeah, for sure. So now we're on to Morgan Geeky. So someone who started the season pretty good, run into some rough spots now recently. That being said, I still think there's a lot of positives that can be taken away from his game so far.
Yeah, for sure. And he's, like you said, he's gone cold recently. It's tough also because he's been playing a lot more fourth line minutes now. He's not always being put in the best spots, which, can be tough, from both a, on ice and just a mental perspective as well. It's never easy kind of getting moved down the lineup. Also, with the power play going to some different looks, they've gone away from that Geeky one-timer on the left side boards, which I was a fan of. I thought it was good, but it is good to be more varied in the kind of looks that you bring. But that was one area where he was generating a lot of offense, through the power play. But yeah, there are definitely some positive takeaway from his game. He's still got a great shot. Would like to see him use it a little bit more, but it feels like a lot of different guys on the team are kind of snake bitten in that way. So, that's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it both, like, with that power play and why it stopped working was, teams came to expect it, right? It was so telegraphed, it was so obvious that that's all they were trying to do, that you could just take that away and then the Kraken just couldn't do anything. I feel like that's kind of indicative of Geeky's game as a whole. I feel like when the season started, he was able to use his size, use his skill to do a lot of things that other teams weren't expecting from him, but now that there's a little bit more tape on him, they kind of know what to do. You just kind of force him, if he's coming into the offensive zone with the puck, just kind of force him off to the boards, near side, and every single time he's just going to take a wrister from, like, the half boards. About halfway into the zone, he's just going to take this, low percentage angle. It worked in the first game. He scored a goal that way. It looked awesome. But he's done it 4 or 5 times since, and he's missed the net completely on a couple of them because it's a low percentage shot to try to do that. Just you've only got one place you can really go over the goalie's shoulder. I'd like to see him maybe try to cut to the inside, right? The defenseman's playing very passive, willing to just let him take that shot out there. Go ahead and make a move. Try to cut to the inside on him. See if even if you can't, maybe you can draw a penalty, a holding call or something, right? Just because the guy's not going to expect it. You're going to be kind of driving right through his chest. That's always a possibility. So I just feel like with a lot of stuff from him, it's just been, it's stayed very stagnant. And I think he's got the skill to be better than that. He's just got to kind of unlock some of that creativity, which is why I'll continue to bang the drum. I still think him with Marcus Johansen and Donskoy would be a really, really fun line because his kind of raw skill matched with their creativity and their ability to get him the puck in interesting situations. I think that could really help unlock his abilities. And it would give them an interesting finisher to play with as well.
Yeah, agreed. Let's see it, Haxtell.
Yeah. So now we've got, as we're moving down into these fourth liners and such, Nathan Bastian. So kind of, it's been a scratch since Colin Blackwell's been back. Seems like that's kind of, going to be just the situation moving forward. But I thought he was really, really solid in those 12 games that he played. Again, making your presence felt on the forecheck. It's something that you ideally would have everybody do, but not everybody can make it happen. And again, much like what I was saying earlier with Donato, he wasn't just going in there and hitting guys. He was trying to use his stick. He was just trying to disrupt what the other team was doing, which is ultimately what the most effective forechecks do.
Yep. And he's someone that I'm surprised we maybe haven't seen in the lineup a little bit recently, just from a matchup perspective. You'd think some teams you might want to get a little bit of size in there. If you can, maybe sub out one of the smaller forwards. But that's kind of been the numbers game on Blackwell, like where it's not even really his fault. It's just with everyone getting healthy, that's how the numbers work out. And he's kind of the guy who has to come out of the lineup. But I do like what I've seen from him early on in the season. He's not one of those guys that's going to show up a ton in the score sheet, but he brings a lot of those things on the forecheck that, maybe this team doesn't have a ton of without him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And, still leading the team in penalty minutes. So he's still got that going for him.
All-time franchise penalty minute leader for now.
For now, Lazon's only 1 minute away. I'm sure, he'll get there. Probably tonight. Certainly good possibility of that. But from Bastian to the guy who's kind of replaced him in the lineup, that's Colin Blackwell. Only a 3-game sample size as of, time of recording. But, you kind of throw out maybe those, some of the earlier bits where, obviously still adjusting to playing again, coming off the injury. Maybe that's still nagging him. And then just conditioning in general. It feels like his game is really starting to get unlocked here.
Yeah, especially this last game, he looked pretty good. The first couple games, he's shaken off some rust, and that's to be expected when not only, you missed all season, but you've missed training camp. I mean, that's really tough, to not get that training camp playing with everyone. That's just a difficult situation to come back into, but I think he's done well so far. Geez, he almost had a goal, 3 seconds into his first shift of his first game.
Yeah,
I think that puck may have hit the post, but he did a good job to get it around the net. But yeah, I think he's going to add a lot of versatility to the team. He's someone I'd like to see in the bumper spot on the second unit power play. He did really well there with the Rangers last season. I think we've only just seen a little bit of what he can do and the different areas he can positively impact the team.
Yeah, I think as he gets back into, game shape, so to speak, as he comes off the injury more completely, as his conditioning, catches up to everybody else, I think there's going to be a lot that they can do. I think they've been pretty conservative with how they've used him. Again, makes sense given the situation, but, we talked about him being somebody that could, really play a lot of different positions in this lineup, right? You can kind of plug him in all 3 forward spots if you had to, and he can play, top 6, bottom 6, wherever you want. He's just that versatile, and his game just translates to playing with just about anybody. He's one of those instant chemistry guys, right? Like it's easy to play with somebody like him, and so I am excited for what the future has in store for Colin Blackwell. Also excited to one day see Mason Appleton again. It's been out for a while. Why don't you, give us an injury update on him, and then we could talk about him.
Yeah, not too much really we can say about his game, that's been new because he's been out with that injury. It's lower body injury. We all, saw the play kind of where it happened. Got his leg rolled up on. It looked like an ankle type of thing. But he has been back on the ice for, about a week now. He's been practicing with the team. He hasn't been taking line rushes. He's only recently started doing some of the drills, but, he's working his way back. So, you never know kind of with with that stuff where they don't really give you a solid timeline or anything, but he's definitely making progress, and it looks like he's kind of ramping it up, as the days go on. So hopefully we see him again soon.
Yeah, well, I mean, it also brings up kind of an interesting question, which is once he's healthy, do you think he sees the lineup again?
You know what? I mean, I think it's tough because you want to give him a chance, and certainly, it's a 6-game losing streak you're on, and he hasn't really played in those games. So you kind of want to inject someone in there who, maybe hasn't been a part of that. I think he will. I think they'll find someone at least for a game or two to take out. Whether it's, I think it might be Donato. Unfortunately, that's the one I could see.
That was my guess too.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, what the call is for the lineup once Appleton comes back.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting choice for Hackstall to make, but I do think that, you're talking about someone who, now that the Kraken have more established their transition game and their kind of speed-based stuff, I think he'll fit in pretty well into that system now. But yeah, I mean, it's not obvious who would come out of the lineup, which in some respects is good. It means that the team is deep, but at other times, like you said, you're in the middle of a big, long losing streak, so obviously these guys aren't playing that great right now. But last but not least, and this is definitely nothing I don't think, you and I could have predicted, which is Calle Järnkrok, who is the only forward without a point to, at least to play a significant amount of time here.
Yeah, and obviously that's not ideal. 0 points this season, and I don't think that's something that either of us really expected. In some ways he's kind of been as advertised, because I think defensively, we know that he's a very defensively responsible forward, and in his own zone, he's been exactly as we thought he'd be. He's been great. But with a guy like that, you would like to see some more offensive contribution for sure.
Yeah, on the penalty kill, he's been excellent, just like, we kind of thought he would be. As you said, in his own zone, he's been good. I even, would argue forecheck, he's been really good. And even just handling the puck, he's been good in the offensive zone. It's not like he's a turnover machine. It's not like he's a guy where, possessions go to die. They don't die on his stick. It's just, maybe he's not getting the puck to the net enough. Only 14 shots through his 12 games. Maybe he could shoot a little more, try to generate things that way. It feels large, on a team full of guys that have felt very unlucky. It just feels like he's just really absorbing most of that. Like he is the center of that black hole of bad luck, unfortunately, because you look at, his Corsi 4 percentage. He's third on this team amongst forwards with over 10 games played. Like, obviously he's doing things right. And it's not like he's being super sheltered as far as, starting in the offensive zone a ton either. Like he is helping drive possession. He is a great player when he is out there. It's just not translating at all to the score sheet. Do you think maybe a little time at center might help wake him up?
Maybe, that's an interesting idea, and I hadn't really, considered that a whole lot. But yeah, I think it might be worth a try, and he certainly has the experience doing that. He's no stranger to playing center, and certainly defensively he can handle the additional responsibilities. Given the way that they're lining up at the moment, there's not really room for him at center, but you could certainly, kick Mccann out to wing, or I don't know, maybe even move Geeky to wing, just give him a little bit of an easier assignment. It's tough, playing center, and having as much responsibility as he's had still, as young as he's had, or as he is. So yeah, that could be an interesting idea. Certainly if you wanted to move Mccann or Geeky out to wing.
Yeah, I think moving Geeky would be a lot of fun. I like what McCann's doing back at center, like we talked about. He's kind of creating his own offense there. I don't necessarily want to mess with that, but as I was saying, Geeky's become kind of predictable. Maybe if you move him off to the wing, he'll experiment a little more. He's gonna have to learn to adapt to things a little differently. It might be kind of good for both of them. Kind of come back to Järnkrok's more original position when he came into this league, playing center, and reignite some stuff there, and put Geeky in a spot where he can focus on just using that offensive skill and getting things going. I think that's definitely something to look at. But that's going to do it for the forward group. Looking at the defenseman, RJ, we'll just stick with how we're doing it and go, in order of scoring. First up, we've got Mark Giordano, the captain. Really up and down play this season. A lot more so than I think any of us predicted there would be from him.
For sure. And, he's historically been a pretty steady guy. You know exactly what you're going to get. But that can be, the result of going to a new situation after so long in Calgary. It can be the result of, being 38. It's not easy when you get up there in years. I think you mentioned to me earlier on one of the post games that just he looks like a guy who's maybe trying to do some of the things that he used to be able to do, and for one reason or another, whether it's age, whether it's maybe a nagging injury we don't know about, that he's just not really able to do the same things.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it looks like to me. Is all athletes experience that at some point, though at least the ones fortunate enough to have a long career, where your body starts slowing down just that little bit that makes a difference, and you have to learn to adjust to that, and that's what it looks like mostly to me. Otherwise, I mean, there are some things that are still kind of head scratching to me. He's playing so much time on the power play, like way more than I think he should, especially when you got Vince Dunn hanging around too. Like he's, and they tried to make him the focal point of the 1-3-1 as far as being that defenseman back there. And I don't know that I agreed with that coming into the season. And then certainly how long they've just been kind of banking on it at some point working, I just don't agree with either. I just think he seems like he's in a place where he should transition more so from being a two-way guy to just focusing on his own zone, play with maybe one of the younger defensemen and help shore them up a little bit, and just kind of be a steady force back there, and continue to be a leader in the locker room rather than be the do-it-all kind of guy that he was for so long in Calgary.
Yep.
But speaking of Vince Dunn's next up. He's tied with Giordano at 7 points so far this season. Only one goal, and again, not a ton of power play, spectacular stuff going on from him the way I think that we were hoping there would be. And really, I don't know that he's been all that I've wanted him to be anyway. Like,
yeah, it's been some more up and down play from him this season, and we've seen flashes of that kind of offensive creativity and the things that he can do, but we're not at the point where we're really seeing it consistently, which is a concern. Early on in the season, he really was not getting much ice time. He was playing third pairing minutes. He's gotten a little bit more recently, which is good to see that they're putting him in some spots to succeed. I think recently he played a couple games ago, played over 24 minutes of ice time, which is a career high for him. So he's starting to get more of that opportunity. But yeah, it hasn't been everything that we've hoped for from him.
No, it doesn't feel like his offensive abilities have woken up or taken that step forward from his time in St. Louis the way we thought there would be. Part of that, though, was because we thought he was going to have more ice time here. He was going to have the opportunity that he wasn't able to have in St. Louis. But yes, the other thing is I just have not been impressed with his defensive play, whether it be in the own zone or really as far as transition going back the other way. There's been a lot of times where, and we knew this was going to be a thing with him, right? He was going to pinch up in the offensive zone and try to make a play, but he's done that a lot, and they really aren't working out for him. He makes some kind of questionable decisions when it comes to doing stuff like that, and I think that's hurt the Kraken. He is not a non-factor when it comes to all those breakaway or odd man rush chances that the Kraken have been having going against them. And so I'd like to see him, if he's not going to explode with the offense the way we thought he would, maybe just focus on playing a little bit more of a complete game until something starts happening for him and he kind of gets that confidence back. But that's just my take. Jamie Alexiak, though, has been pretty much as advertised. Big physical guy, going to go in there, throw his body around, get into some fights, usually because somebody picks a fight with him for some reason. Because it's just that like prison rule thing, right? Go after the biggest. Yeah. I know, go after that biggest guy and then you're top dog. But it hasn't really worked out for anybody so far. And
those guys seem to regret it pretty soon after.
For sure. And then, the underrated aspect of his game that has been around for a little while, which is his, ability to drive the net, which is, not something you'd think of for him.
We are seeing that a lot recently. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the net front drive. I mean, I don't blame you. If I had that kind of size and I'm playing in the NHL, heck, I'd want to use it that way. Mm-hmm. It looks fun out there, when you're that big and you get to forecheck, you get to do net drive stuff. I don't know whether it's always the best idea, for the Kraken and what they're doing, but yeah, I'm sure it's fun.
Yeah. Really, what's interesting is the one place he doesn't use his size is when he's playing defensively. Arguably the one time you should be using your size. He'll use it enough to like kind of clear guys out from in front of the net. He's pretty good about that kind of stuff. But we've seen a couple times where there have been either breakaways or odd man rushes, and he's been back or getting back, and he'll just try to poke check it instead of bodying up a guy or laying somebody out. And those seem like instances where it's okay to kind of step up and hit somebody.
Absolutely. And I think it's just something about, in transition with the speed there, not wanting to get beat. And I understand that instinct, but, the best defensemen, find a way to use that size, even when traveling at speed, even when getting back. And certainly, when you have size mismatches, like on the DeBrincat goal in the Chicago game,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the first one I think of where, you've got maybe a foot of height on this guy.
It is a whole foot. He's a
whole foot. Yes.
Yep.
That you can afford to kind of lean into the guy, even though he had a step. That's something where you can kind of use your size, use your reach a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd like to see that a little bit more from him, especially in those transitional moments, because we've seen that from other guys on the team. Really the next two guys we're going to talk about, in Larson and Susie, have both done it, where they'll really kind of play the man, not the puck, in the transition game, which isn't necessarily where that adage comes from, but it's worked out a lot in those situations as far as stalling out the other team. So Alexiak has found himself in several of those situations, and I think that's really the one thing he could do to kind of fill out his game and be really, really solid for this team. But we'll go ahead and move into Adam Larson. I mean, as advertised,
go ahead, rave about him.
I mean, it's hard because it's like, he's been great, but at the same time, it's just, he's as advertised as a Swedish defenseman who's just, doing everything right and getting it done in in an underappreciated manner.
For sure. I mean, and I like that you've kind of clued me in throughout the season. You've really got me watching him probably closer than I otherwise would be. And just some of the things that I'm seeing are just so impressive, and the understated kind of things, tying your man up in front, and making sure to mark the right guy, just the things that he does so consistently and so effortlessly that you don't even really notice, unless you're out there looking for it because Dylan's telling you to look for it. But yeah, I mean, just, not enough good things to say about, Adam Larson. I mean, what else could you say?
Yeah, I mean, he's, I would say for sure he's been the best defensive defenseman on the team so far. He's been the best defenseman in their own zone, and a lot of that is because he plays so smart. He knows what guy to cover. He knows when to shift his coverage off of somebody to somebody else. He can see the play developing. He's got good instincts for what the other team wants to do, which really isn't easy. And it probably speaks to, either he's just a total savant at it, or he watches a lot of tape and he knows kind of the tendencies of all the other players and what the other teams want to be doing. And he's able to internalize that and then go out there and put it on the ice, which, watching film and understanding film is only half the battle. You have to then be able to actually execute on, what you decide to do in the heat of, battle, so to speak. And he's been really, really good at that. And I also don't think it can be overlooked that, most of the season he's been matched with Jeremy Lauzon, who has struggled in coverage the most. And so, the fact that things haven't been, absolutely horrible when they're out there, I think is a lot because of what Larson's been doing.
Now, I have a question for you, Dylan, and I got to play devil's advocate. This is what I love to do, where you can't complain about anything that Larson's really doing on the ice. But as you pointed out, he's been paired with Jeremy Lauzon for most of the season. Would you like to see him do more, I guess, of kind of teaching Lauzon maybe how to be in the right spots a little bit more, imparting that veteran wisdom and maybe coaching him up a little bit, whether it's in practice or just kind of little pointers during the game, or do you think that's kind of more the coaching staff's job?
No, I think that's totally on, veteran players to do that too, especially, I mean, he's got an A on his chest, Larson, right? He's in a leadership position. So I do think that is something, and, for all we know, he is, and Lauzon's just not listening to it. But I think in general, for a lot of things with this team, especially with guys like Lauzon, it's a shared responsibility. It's on the coaching staff, it's on the video coaches, but it's also on, your D partner, to be talking to you on the bench and all of that. So yeah, I think that's a fair criticism potentially. Again, it's hard without really knowing. Like he could be on him every day in the locker room, right? And we just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know.
But yes, given how long given how long it's gone on, it's definitely worth something to bring up. The only thing I'll say from Larson that I want to see him do a little bit more is shoot. Because, I've said it before, he has a really, really heavy wrist shot that stays low and is perfect for generating rebounds off goalies' pads. And we've seen it a couple times, the few times he's done it so far this year. I'd love to see him do it more. I think it would be interesting to have him out there on the power play sometimes just because of that, and his instincts, his understanding for what's going on. I think that would be interesting. But yeah, I think, he's been a really, really solid player. Happy to see that. Carson Soucy is next one up, and he really surprised me this year. I was a little more down on him than I think most people, and I'm willing to admit that was just because, I didn't recognize really how good he was in Minnesota, the way everybody else did, including you. I got no problem admitting that. I think he's been really, really solid, especially defensively. Talked about it when we were talking about Alexiak as far as using his size in transition, going the other way, right? Coming back into your defensive zone. A lot of times he ties up the guy and the puck will then, get lost and another Kraken can come in and pick it up. And it's, he just kills that whole offensive chance for the other team. It's been really fun.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I figure he's the kind of guy, if you like Adam Larson, I think you like Carson Soucy and the kind of things that he brings. I mean, and he doesn't really jump off the page when you look at him, play, it's kind of those more quiet, underappreciated type of things. But yeah, he's been solid every game he's played in. Unfortunately, he's kind of been in this defense rotation where he's been out of the lineup a lot, kind of swapped in and out for Hayden Flurry. But every time that he's come back in, just about, I think he's kind of shown that he deserves to be a regular.
Yeah, there've been some rough games, and really the thing I'd want to focus on from him is working on his outlet passes a little bit. That's not to say he's been bad. I feel like if anybody, he's the one who's kind of forcing things at times. Right. He'll try to make a stretch pass that maybe he shouldn't be making, or go ahead and he's not a bad skater, but he doesn't look like somebody who's confident in his skating ability in a lot of situations. That doesn't really matter so much in his own zone, but certainly in the offensive zone, and certainly when it comes to breaking plays out in transition. He'll kind of just stay put wherever he collects the puck and then try to make the pass from there. I'd like to see him take a couple strides up, move up, let the play kind of develop, get a sense for what's going on, but you're still keeping things going in that sense. I'd like to see that from him, but really if that's the only thing I'm bringing up, then that means he's doing pretty good. Jeremy Lauzon, had to get to him eventually. It's been rough. There aren't too many positives to take away from his game. He's a good fighter. And I think he at least
plays with an edge.
Yeah, and he at least fights smartly. He's not just like out there taking a bunch of needless penalties and stuff like that. So there is definitely something to be said for that, because you could have bad defensemen in coverage that are also taking penalties, taking hooking penalties, grabbing guys, holding penalties, all that stuff. He doesn't do that. So that is definitely something that I will recognize. But at the same time, just these lapses in coverage are just so painful to watch.
And it feels like we see at least one every game. It's kind of this constant thing that keeps coming up. And I mean, at the end of the day, it just needs to be fixed. I mean, on the positive side, though, if you want to look at that, they're fixable mistakes. They're coachable mistakes. It's the kind of thing that, you get a good coach working with him, you can easily, get that out of his game, in theory. So, I haven't given up hope on him yet, because I think there still are a lot of good sides to what he can do. And if he can just sort that out, he can be an NHL regular, but it just needs to be fixed before it, costs the team any more games.
Yeah. And so much of it's just watching the puck in his own zone. And then he just drifts out of coverage, or a guy will just make a move behind him, and then, they've got space and he just doesn't recognize it. And so, yeah, again, head on a swivel, play the man, not the puck. All the basic stuff, we taught the squirts when we were coaching. It's just those things. He has started, trying to take shots more offensively as of late, which I've thought is kind of interesting. And in some aspects, I guess it's a good thing because it means he's comfortable out there. He's feeling a little more confident that he's taking shots, and not only is he taking shots, he's also kind of walking into the offensive zone. And he's not the fastest guy coming back, so that does mean he is feeling good about himself in that sense. But yeah, I definitely want to see some better coverage from him.
And why not? He stays in the lineup just about every game, even with the rotation.
Exactly, he's there every night. So now Hayden Flurry. He's been the guy bouncing in and out with Carson Soucy for the most part. Not seeing him super regularly, but he's had some really good flashes, so far this season.
He has, and especially when he's really decided to shoot the puck. Mm-hmm. There was a 2-game stretch where he had like 5, 6, 7 shots on goal in the game, and it generated a lot of offense. Which really helped provide another element of the Kraken's attack that teams really weren't ready for. They were playing against him, so he's got a really good shot, and seeing it in practice too, like such an impressive shot. Like there's so much kind of power and speed behind every shot that he takes, even just a little. When you could tell he's not putting it all into it, in warm-ups or practice. So you'd like to see him use that. He's had some rough times in his own zone the last couple games that he's been in, to kind of put it mildly. There was the start of, I forget which game it was. It was a Chicago game where he was just falling all over the place. So yeah, I don't know what was up with that, but yeah, he's one of those players where I'm really hoping it works out for him too, because of the things that he brings, that I think he can be the solution to some of the problems the Kraken have in generating offense from the blue line. But it is still a work in progress.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because so much of the player we're seeing now is the player that he was, playing in Red Deer in the WHL. Great shot, great slap shot, good placement, good speed. It's heavy, all that stuff. Never used it in Carolina for some reason. Starting to use it here, but that's always to me been like one of the things that really makes him stand out has been his shot. Excited to see that. But then on the other side, skating isn't very fluid, to say the least. He still looks like that lanky kid coming out of his growth spurt at times, and 25 by now. Hopefully he should be used to his body. And be coordinated with it. But yes, there are games where he'll just blow a tire for some reason, or his edge work won't be there, and then he'll be beaten laterally because of it, or even just getting beat in transition just because not great on his crossovers that night or something. But it is weird because it's not consistently one thing. It's consistently skating, but it's not consistently one thing within skating. And then there are other nights where it all looks totally normal for him. So it is kind of a weird situation watching him. But yes, I think he deserves maybe some more time over somebody like Lauzon in the lineup. Like to see him put in some offensive situations. Just never match him with Adam Larson again, because that was a nightmare.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's it for the defensemen. So last but not least, goaltending.
Well, we got to give one mention. #free Will Borgen.
Yes.
Let's just one game. Give us one game.
Give us something to talk about. I'd love to break down the 8 minutes that he got against whoever, but unfortunately we haven't gotten that yet. But yes, would love to see Will Borgen in the lineup, especially because he looks pretty decent at practice. Like, I don't know.
I watched him at practice. He looks fine.
Yeah. So that's that. Moving on to goaltending. I guess we can technically still stick with this theme of going based on points, because Philip Grubauer does have an assist. He is outscoring Calle Jarnkrok at the moment. Philip Grubauer. We've talked a lot about goaltending. We talked about this last week, right? Kind of who all this is on. Is it on the goaltending? Is it on the defense? Grubauer, I think he's been leaned on more so than we thought he would. Part of that was because Drieger was hurt for a while. But I don't know. When I see like you tweet out that he's starting in net that night or whatever, I just don't have that same level of confidence anymore.
It's gotten to the point where, as chances kind of come in, you're sitting on the edge of your seat, just like, which is never a good thing, when you're talking about a goalie. Earlier in the season, I certainly didn't feel that, but now it's just something that's kind of present in my mind. Hopefully getting more rest now will help. Before the Colorado game where Drieger got the start, Hackstall did mention that he felt that it was really the first time that they've had both goalies fully healthy, which even though Drieger had played one since coming off of IR, hinting that maybe he wasn't really back to 100%. And then, looking at Drieger's performance against Colorado, giving up those 4 goals before getting yanked, maybe he's not back to 100%, even as it is. And, certainly with Hackstall feeling the need to put Grubauer back into the game, despite, it being 4-0, that might tell you what you need to know. So I don't think the workload's going to get much lighter on him anytime soon. He's just got to turn things around.
Right. And, we talked about that last week. He's only ever really seen a majority of starts for a team once in his whole career. So, it'll be interesting to see how he holds up to all of that, especially considering that other season was last season. So,
yep.
Maybe it's just a little bit of, he's played a lot of hockey in the last, 12 months, and that's catching up to him. But yes, he lets in some of those squeaky, easy ones that you don't want to see. Otherwise, he plays pretty fundamentally sound. His positioning's been good and stuff. I don't have questions there or anything. It's just gotta, tighten up on some of those soft goals, and then, just steal a win. Just try to just come up big one night. He hasn't played super terrible in all of these losses, but he's not, he's not playing like some of the goaltenders we've seen or that we've gone up against where, we'll outshoot the other team 2-1 and they just stand on their head and they make something happen. I'd like to see Grubauer do one of those. I think that would go a long way with the fan base and their confidence in him.
For sure.
And then we got Chris Drieger, and I don't know what to make of him. As you said, maybe it's still the injury stuff, but even going back through the preseason, he just has not looked good or comfortable on this team.
No, and I'm willing to give him some leeway with the preseason stuff, just because at that point it's so new, communicating with your defensemen and this whole new team, and you're not even playing in the same building. It's through all these or same type of building. Even you're playing in these junior rinks. That's not easy to do. But yeah, throughout the regular season, I mean, he hasn't had a whole lot of healthy time really, and certainly with Hackstall hinting that he may not have been 100% even after coming off IR, I think that's something we certainly can't discount. That maybe just the knee isn't quite 100%, which that's difficult on a goalie. A knee injury is hard to deal with, especially if it's nagging you. We don't know that it is, but there's some hints there. In the Colorado game, I mean, just his angles were off. I mean, he wasn't, and I don't think that's a knee thing. That's just finding the right angle to line up to a shot. It's certain things like that you just need to get right before you can really, try and be the hot hand and take some of the strain off of Philip Grubauer.
Yeah, some of the positioning in that was really surprising to see and really, difficult to see and was not something I expected, but it made me not feel great about, calling for him in a lot of these games that we've been calling for him. A couple, suggestions maybe. We talked about the injury thing. How much of this is because he maybe thought he was going to be the guy for Seattle through that expansion draft process, right? He's there the day of the expansion draft. There's a lot of media availability. Fans are super excited to see him. We all embraced him. He was going to be our goalie. And then a couple days later, Kraken go out and sign Philip Grubauer. Do you think any of that maybe got to him a little bit? He thought, this was his job. It was locked up. And then all of a sudden comes in this guy who was a finalist for the Vezina a year ago.
Yeah, I don't know that has gotten to. I certainly haven't seen any evidence, I guess, but it certainly is. It's tough. I mean, just thinking logically, it's tough on a guy. And Drieger, it's not even like he was an expansion draft pick where he had no choice. Oh well, I guess Seattle took me. I got to go. No, he chose to sign in Seattle. If he wanted to test free agency and go to another spot, he could have. And looking back at it, there are certainly some teams that I think would have given him a similar contract and really committed to him as their number one. Which that's tough to go into this situation now where you've got Grubauer signed for 6 years. Like where's your lane to really take over the starting job? It's tough. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that played some part in it. Because it's tough to deal with, mentally, knowing that that's the situation.
Yeah, and especially because we don't know what Ron Francis said to him during all that, right? Ron
That's
Francis,
true,
he talked kind of about the Grubauer thing, how that just kind of happened. Like,
yeah, they certainly did not plan it at the time.
Yeah.
Like when they signed Drieger, and I believe the hockey ops team when they say, when they signed Drieger, they did not have Grubauer in their mind. They thought he was going to re-sign in Colorado, and then it just kind of comes up.
Yeah.
And so who knows what was said to Drieger, and certainly what he believed his role would be.
Yeah, so I bring that up just because goaltending it's a lot mental, and so that could definitely be something that's going on there. The other thing is just Seattle plays a very different defensive style than Florida, where he had his success, and I wonder if maybe that's coming into play here just a little bit, but also it's also just hard with only a 3-game sample size to really dig into a lot of that kind of stuff. Quick shout out to Joey Decord. Been awesome every time he's been around the Kraken. He's been better than his stats show. So.
Yeah, I think you could make a good argument. He's been their best goalie this season.
Yeah, I mean he's certainly the only one that you feel like could step in and like pull a game out of his hat and just be like, okay, here you go, here's a W, guys. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And there's definitely something to be said for that amongst goaltenders. So that's it. Yeah, a little bit of a bummer there, I guess, to leave off the podcast to talking about the goaltenders. But, think back to all the positive stuff we were talking about before. Tough road stretch coming up here, just tough schedule in general, also with tonight against the Capitals, last night for everybody listening, and then Carolina midweek. But I think, at some point it's going to happen for the Kraken. A win's going to come in, and that hopefully will spark everything else. I would be very surprised if we go through this next week before the next podcast if the Kraken haven't won another game.
If it's against one of these really good teams, all the better. I mean,
yeah,
that's even better for your confidence.
Yeah, but otherwise, just got to start getting points, get things moving in the right direction. It's got to start somewhere. But that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. A little bit longer than normal, but I think that was probably good. Keep your eye out for news about the Patreon launching December 1st. And if you can, join us this Friday for that kind of watch along in that Tampa Bay game. And that's going to do it for us. We will see you all next time.